Okay, so lash extensions are like everywhere now, right? They look amazing, and they're such a popular way to just amp up your look. But have you ever actually stopped and thought about what it takes to keep that service, safe? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the stuff every lash pro has to know to protect your health. This is the stuff that comes right out of their own training guides.
So let's just jump right in with a question for you. What do you think is the single most important lesson your lash artist ever learned? I mean, it's easy to think it's all about artistry, like creating that perfect fluffy fan or getting that dramatic cat eye just right. But the real answer, the thing that truly matters, it's knowing the difference between a little bit of irritation and a full-blown, serious infection. So yeah, let's get into it.
Look, pretty much any beauty service has some level of risk, right? But when you're working literally inches from someone's eyeball, well, the stakes get really, really high really fast.
And that is the absolute crucial point. A great lash artist isn't just an artist. Think of them as the first line of defense for your health. They're trained to look, to observe, to assess, because something they spot before the glue even comes out can be the difference between a tiny issue and a huge, painful problem. When you break it down, it's really about three big things. First, contagious stuff. It's real, and it can absolutely spread from you to the tools to the next person in the chair. Not good. Second, they have to know what a contraindication is. That's just a fancy word for a red flag, a sign that says, whoa, stop the service right now. And third, they need to know exactly what to do if, something goes wrong and you have a reaction right there in the middle of the appointment. So let's talk about that word for a second, contraindication. It sounds super technical, but all it means is a reason not to do something. It's any situation where going ahead with the service could actually be harmful to you. And this isn't your tech being difficult or picky, it's them being a true professional. Honestly, just knowing that term makes you a much smarter client. Okay, so what are they looking for? What are the things they're trained to spot, just by looking at your eyes? Let's go over some of the big ones. What's so striking here is how black and white it is. Just look at that professionals move column. When it comes to something super contagious like conjunctivitis, you probably know it as pink eye, the answer is always the same. Do not perform the service. Full stop. Refer to a doctor. There's no waffling, no maybe, because when it comes to your safety, there is absolutely no gray area. And check this out, because this really shows you the level of detail we're talking about. To most of us, a sty and a chalazion might look pretty much the same, right? Just a weird bump on the eyelid. But a pro knows that a sty is a bacterial infection, it's contagious, and it's a hard no for getting lashes. A chalazion, on the other hand, is just a blocked oil gland. Not contagious. Getting those two mixed up, yeah, that could have some pretty serious consequences. All right, let's move on to one of the biggest and probably most misunderstood problems in the lash world. How do you know if you're having a true allergic reaction or if it's just an irritation? Because believe me, telling the difference is absolutely critical. So, a true allergy, that's your immune system going into full-on panic mode. It's basically screaming, threat detected. Your body identifies a substance as a dangerous invader and launches an attack. And here's the really scary part. Allergies don't usually get better. In fact, they almost always get worse every single time you're exposed. But an irritation or a sensitivity, that's totally different. It's not your immune system. It's a direct local reaction. A good way to think about it is like a tiny chemical burn. The substance itself, maybe the fumes from the glue, is just physically irritating your skin or your eye right where it makes contact. It's not a systemic freakout like an allergy. So, what's the telltale sign? How can a pro make a quick judgment call? Well, here's a little rule of thumb they learn. If you say it's itching, like a deep, persistent itch, that points towards an allergy. But if you say it's burning or stinging, that's usually a sign of an irritant reaction. It's a simple clue, but man, is it an important one. And what's the number one bad guy when it comes to true allergies? It's a chemical called cyanoacrylate. That's the main ingredient, the actual bonding agent, in pretty much every single lash glue on the market. And the craziest part, you could get lashes for 5-10 years with zero issues. And then one day, boom, your body just decides it's allergic. It's wild. And it's why a good tech is always paying attention. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the risks, the scary stuff. So what's the solution? What's the plan? Well, it all comes down to having a professional safety net, a system, a set of clear, strict rules designed to handle exactly these kinds of situations. So if a reaction starts happening right there in the chair, a pro doesn't freak out. They're trained not to panic. They have a calm 5-step plan.
Step 1. Stop everything immediately. 2. Get the product off safely. 3. Rinse the area with cool water. 4. If anything got in the eye, they flush it and tell you to get medical help right away. And 5. They write it all down. Every product they used, every step they took. It's a procedure that's all about protecting you.
Of course, the best way to deal with a bad reaction is to, well, not have one in the first place. And that's exactly what a patch test is for. It's so simple. They just apply a little bit of the product to your skin at least 48 hours before your real appointment to see if you react. For a true pro, this should be totally non-negotiable. It's a basic standard of care.
And you know what? Sometimes the most professional thing a lash artist can possibly do is say no. It can be a bummer to hear something like, "I'm sorry I can't do your lashes today." But I'm telling you, when you hear those words, that's how you know you're with someone who puts your health and safety way ahead of making a few bucks from one appointment.
So now that you've had this little peek behind the curtain, you can see how it all comes back to you, the client. At the end of the day, all this training, all this knowledge, it has one single goal: making sure your safety is priority number one.
And that really just leaves us with one last question to think about. Now that you know all this, the next time you go to book a lash appointment, or really any beauty service, what are you going to look for? What questions are you going to ask? Because being an informed client, well, that's the most powerful tool you've got.